So I am so excited to have a bona fide TV star and celebrity on this podcast today.
Okay. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think you want to blur your background just based on what we
No,
spoke about.
I think we should leave it. Should we leave it?
It's madness because I mean, if it's not Christmas, what are the little men behind you?
I think it could really throw people off. Like this is, like are they
Like a
reindeer?
Sia.
Are they dancing? Oh no, but that one quite looks like Santa. Anybody who's just listening to this is going to be extremely confused right now, but I suggest going to YouTube to see what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's like a Sia Christmas album. Okay, I don't know if we're gonna start again or if we
Let's
are.
keep going and then see what happens.
Cool.
Sometimes we do this, and most of the time the editors don't cut me out. They just let me ramble like this. I think listeners, do you find it charming when I ramble on like this at the beginning or not? They can't tell me. It's a one-way podcast system. But anyway, Kiran, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Alisha. I'm so excited to be here. To be fair to you, you weren't rambling. I did interrupt you. You were starting an introduction, and then I was like, "Are we doing the reindeer in your background?" Because it was a pre-convo,
like a beat, like behind the scenes content for people that they see the magic of podcast life, which is that I'm recording this in December, even though I'm gonna be pretending that it's January. Or maybe someone's listening to this in like the year 2032, and I don't know. It could be content is forever, right? That's scary.
and that word "content," and "content is forever" does sound like another Sia song.
It does sound like a Sia song. So this is relevant because before we started recording, we were talking about my deep dive into the Sia Christmas album, which I was saying, and we'll stand by this in January. I think you could listen to any time of year. It's that weird and good.
Yeah, which is a mood. I'm going to listen to it. This has become a Sia promo podcast.
Sponsored by Sia.
Sponsored by Christmas and Sia. Yes, exactly.
So if you haven't figured it out, Kiran is a stand-up comedian as well as an actor and performer. Because this girl is funny. I went to see her at Fringe. We have a mutual friend who recommended to go see this show. And I'm not going to lie, I'm really picky about my stand-up in that I don't like most of it. It's not even that I don't like most of it. I just don't like consume a lot of stand-up. But I was like, this chick seems funny. And boy, was I right. I had like the best hour of my Fringe at your show. That includes when I was performing at Fringe. And you're freaking hilarious. So I'm so glad you agreed to be on today.
Oh my God, that's such a nice review. That might make the poster. The best hour at Fringe, including the hour I was performing at Fringe. Is
very true.
Because Alisha lives in Edinburgh. For anyone who is just tuning into Alisha, who's also a wonderful writer author.
And it's Christmas here, but it's actually Thanksgiving in California. Is that how time zones work now?
That's time zones. Yeah, actually, here it is. It is the day of our Lord, Juice Man. It's cucumber juice day in California. Also known as every day.
Every day. Okay, so take me back. How did you get so funny and know that you wanted to be a comedian?
I first of all, I gotta say, I love the review that you're like, I am not a fan of stand-up comedy and I don't watch any of it.
If it's fair, I also don't listen to almost any podcasts and host one. So,
but I think it's all reasonable. There's only so much time one has in a day. Yeah, I started stand-up after making a documentary about women rebel soldiers in Nepal, which is the typical path. That's right. That's how everyone, you make your documentary in the jungles and then you say hard pivot. Let's do comedy now. I did a diversity showcase with like a sketch comedy showcase because I was kind of, it was an independent project, like right out of college, felt like super burnt out. And I was like, comedy, this will be fun. I used that voice. I was Mickey Mouse back then. And then Yeah. And then basically, that was a really great group of people. It was in Los Angeles, a lot of comics. And then I thought, oh, I'll just try it. And if you're having fun, keep going. And if not, quit because it's hard. And here we are today. We're here a fringe later, having weathered the comedy storm. Oh my God, are we poets? What
Wow.
is happening?
I think
Wow.
we could do this whole podcast in rhyme if you really
I
felt like
would
it.
love that. We were talking about how, rhyme is for not just nursery people,
Nursery
children,
humans.
the humans of the nursery. But also it's that in rap, which is very bizarre to me, that it's those two, those are the two major places. And then as Alisha kindly pointed out, also musicals.
Yeah, which we know all cool people listen to. So
yeah, it's for the coolest of the cool.
I was actually laughing today because my kids came home using this word Riz like 6 months ago and saying like Riz was like cool points at school. Like, oh, I don't have any Riz, or so-and-so has a lot of Riz. And then just today, Riz has been announced as like the Oxford word of the year. And I showed my son and he goes, oh, now it's not cool anymore. Because I know what it is, so it's not cool. So I'm no longer, at least for my children, I'm not the arbiter of what is cool. I'm not sure if I am for anybody. But I think
You
you're
are for
cool.
me.
Well, I think you're cool, and that's why you're here. So I heard
what is Riz for those who don't know?
I think it's like cool points, or like somebody has like a lot of romantic credibility. It's like a system, like a value system. Like you have a lot of Riz or not a lot of Riz. This is gonna be so embarrassing if I'm wrong about this, actually. Because I did that usual thing where I saw a headline, I read the first paragraph, and then I immediately decided to tell everybody about the article, not having finished it. So I'm sorry if I got this wrong. If people are using this word incorrectly now, you can blame it on me.
That's hilarious. I love the way you're like, and I did this because I'm a writer. That's correct. So,
Exactly.
you know what it is. Read the back, call it a day. Read the first paragraph, call it a day. I'm excited. I have your book. It came to my home and it's on my nightstand. It's on my there's one other one and you're next in queue. So
who's ahead of me? Just out of curiosity.
It's this book called Permission to Speak by
By
this
Samara Bay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, look at you knowing stuff.
She was my pub date twin. Our books both came out on the same day. And actually, she was on my previous podcast, Incarnation, Quit Your Day Job. So
wow, I'm really enjoying her book, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy your book. I love that you know. I mean, how? Wow.
She just reached out to me and she was like, our books are coming out on the same day. Let's be friends. And I was like, that sounds great. You seem amazing. So I love following everything that she's doing. And she is LA based as well, I think, and kind of works in the broader entertainment industry. Is that what you?
I believe that's correct. Yeah. I've really enjoyed the book. It's nice. It's nice to hear, yeah, just different points of view and things that you're not thinking about. Hers is a lot about breath and speech, but as a conduit to talking about, power, I think, and power structures. And so that's been really fascinating. And just seeing someone else's expertise is always nice. You get to step into someone else's world, and I appreciate that. So I'm very excited to read yours too.
Well, I think Samara's book and this idea of using your voice as a tool for power and to reclaim that in, as I understand it from her book, which I read more than the first paragraph of, so few, has not historically always been the case for women and voices that didn't fit this kind of stereotype of what a powerful voice was supposed to sound like. But great segue there, because you are a person who has used your voice to talk about hilarious things, but also your routine at Fringe, or your set at Fringe that I saw. Do we call it a routine? Can I call it it's not a routine.
You can call it a routine. That was
like
actually, no, that's
routine?
a very good.
Okay.
No, as you didn't say your little skit. And so you crushed it.
Not a little skit. It was an extremely powerful set that takes a really traumatic incident that you went through and makes it thought-provoking and also really funny. So can you tell our listeners who didn't have the benefit of being with you at Fringe what this kind of piece that you are continuing to work on and refine is about?
Yeah. So I was working on it in Fringe. The working title we had said was Assault on Comedy. That's the working title. It was previously Joy Stock and might be a previously different thing, but essentially back in December 16th of 2022, I went to a wine bar with a friend of mine, and like you do, you have fun, and then we left, and she wanted some cigarettes, and so we went to a convenience store, and I got some Cheez-Its, as you do when you're living in Los Angeles, living your best life. And as we were leaving, a guy just took a glass bottle and smashed it into my face, kind of from behind, very, very quickly, like a baseball bat. And it left, an orbital fracture and 2 nasal fractures, and was like obviously like massively shocking, and kind of set off this trajectory of events where it led to multiple surgeries, and they had to kind of like, I'm so sorry. I was just thinking about how my brain just went away, because it's like even now it's like all of like the medical bills from it, like it still exists, right? It still exists in your life. So that's the transgression that you just saw. Like where did her brain go? That's where it just went to. But on the positive side, they apprehended the guy who did it, and then the DA, the district attorney here in Los Angeles, DA, as I like to call them, for short, thank you. They prosecute as it like the people versus kind of case. And so in this bizarre twist, like the judge asks for the statement of what you, as the person who experienced the violent crime, would want to see happen to this person, like prison or rehabilitation, which is a crazy binary, I think, in a world right now that we're living in, where there's so much, kind of black and white. It's either this or it's this. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of middle ground, in so much of the thinking. I would prefer to live in a world that's much more gray and much more nuanced. And so there's something really kind of like, I don't know, it felt like a weird metaphor. And for me, hilarious description. You're welcome, Alisha, crushing the hilarity. But for me, I think comedy was a way to just kind of like take some of the stuff that was happening in real time and kind of like process it and act like kind of almost a pressure valve, like a pressure release valve, like for myself. And I run a weekly show here. And so I would do things before it was even funny. And then it was like, oh, that like felt good, and then it was like, oh, there's something here. And then kind of slowly built, over the course of, like 8 months last year, like turned a bunch of the material into comedy. And it became not only like a good way to like share the story with people who didn't know it, or people who were like, oh my God, what happened? But also like kind of a way to shift the narrative, I think, for myself, where it's like this really bad thing that happened to you, but if you can like turn it into something like good or funny or beautiful, you can kind of almost transform the event itself and what it means to you, because you've changed the context and the meaning. And so, yeah, I think that that was kind of the goal, was to share it with people like you, and then do their podcast. That's actually what I was thinking. Immediately following was like December 15th, 2022. I was like, if I get hit in the face with a bottle, like, not only do I want to make it into stand-up, but I want to do a stranger's podcast who came to the show approximately 1 year later. And that has happened. So,
I mean, dreams really do come true. Isn't that what Hollywood is all about? Everybody's dreams come true all the time, and no one's ever disappointed.
We're doing it. Live, laugh, love.
So, I know that you had been working on something, and then when this happened, you sort of changed tack. What was your comedy like before this incident? And it kind of became the, like, I guess, the central narrative to your set.
Yeah. So I've definitely taped like a half hour, like of jokes. That's really interesting. It's like I tape like a half hour, but more jokes, This was, I think, the first I had made an effort to kind of structure something that had a beginning, middle, and end. Do you know what I mean? With a bunch of old jokes in it, like that was called Joy Suck, and so we just had like a bunch of jokes that I knew were great. And then we loosely built them around a theme, essentially, and wove those things together. I think this then became this much more deliberate, like, these are the things that are happening. How do we make these things funny? And that's I think they're both really interesting ways to work. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong way. Actually, there's a right way to do art, and if you don't do it that way, the police are coming to get you. They're both really interesting ways to do it. But I so I think I knew that it was like, I just knew that in this case, like, the story was like sitting. It was just, sometimes like you're propelled to do something. You're like, this is. I can't tell you in like really eloquent, like brainy words why, but it was just like a real gut feeling to like, follow that, like do this, both as a way to process it and as a way to do it. And so then the next hour, starting to work on the next one now, it's the one that you saw, Alisha, is being edited currently. And so it'll be out sometime next year. And then it's kind of, I think what I realized is like a lot of the comedy in that was around this story, but I think the next hour will be a lot about like love, relationships. Do you know what I mean? So it's like all of those, like that's kind of like the, like the big theme. And then we'll kind of be working out the material as we go and seeing what's hilarious and then putting it together.
So as an artiste, what is your process? What is your craft, one might say? But no, seriously, I mean, like, are you like constantly testing out jokes to see what lands and what doesn't? Like, how are you kind of pulling these pieces together and feeling confident that something is going to be really funny when you get into a room?
I think, okay, so the one thing I'm going to say about stand-up is I think it's really iterative. The process is really iterative. So the one thing it teaches you more than anything else is like, and I'm sure this isn't true for the way that everybody writes, but it's like, you'll have a kernel of something kind of, and then you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to like not put too much, in my case, don't put too much pressure on it. Like the times that it's gone the worst is usually when I like sit down, like write something, and I'm like, this is gonna be fire. You know what I mean? And then you go on stage and you're like, the first line doesn't work and you're like, oh my God, it's going very badly. And then you just spiral from there.
I have to say that the idea of bombing as a stand-up seems to me like one of the most terrifying things in the world. I'm sure it's not. Like, I'm sure it just has to happen. It happens all the time. But the idea of like telling what you think is a really funny joke and nobody laughing is just, I think that's what my nightmares are made of, I think.
So that's part of the reason why what I do, like one of the ways to make that a little bit easier is like take a little bit of pressure off of how funny the initial idea is. Do you know what I mean? So like, instead of being like, I'm going to write out this whole bit and it's going to be, and I'm going to remember every piece of it. It's more like, let me test this idea. Does this feel correct? Like, does this, okay, that kind of had some legs, or, oh, that thing that we talked about here had some legs. Okay, great. Now let's build it out and like, let the process be iterative, or like, I think maybe we can do it this way. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, that didn't feel great. And then remember, you have some fail safes where you can like, I think as long as you're acknowledging what's going on in the room, like, don't go to like a big like Netflix showcase and like do your new material. Right. Do you know what I mean? But like don't do that. You're being an idiot. What are you doing? But like when you're testing it out in a relatively warm room and it doesn't work, it's just kind of like, you can acknowledge it. Okay, well, not that one, not today,
Yeah.
Satan said no, and so Sia said no.
Sia said, not funny.
Not funny. It's not for us. So I think, no, it's whenever you're doing newer stuff, I think that's part of what keeps comics kind of humble, is like this idea of like, I think I heard like some very big comic at some point, I don't remember who, because what is a person? Do you know what I mean? A person is just an idea of myself that's iterated as a different human being. I did do mushrooms before we started
you a
this
Dr.
interview.
Seuss line, which is a person's a person, no matter how small.
Oh, wow. Okay,
I don't know
great.
what
So
we
like,
rhyme that with. I think it rhymes with all or maybe tall.
does a mouse, so then is in that context, is a mouse a person?
Well, mostly Dr. Seuss was talking about who are sort of these like mouse-like people.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely
like
someone's done a PhD on this. I don't know them.
yeah. I'm curious of like sometimes I'll say like everyone's a person, like a dog is a person, but technically a dog is a dog, but it's kind of also a person. Like everyone has feelings is the point.
Right. Exactly.
Everyone has feelings. Everyone's feelings can be hurt. Everyone needs to be treated with care and respect, whatever, blah, blah,
That's
blah.
what Dr. Seuss was trying to rhyme. I'm so sorry I took you off your train of thought.
That's okay. I'm not even really sure what we were talking about.
Talking about mushrooms and comedy. No, okay. So is there anything, is there any topic in your life that's like completely off limits for you? You won't joke about it.
That's a great question. I think it's more like when things are okay, there's a joke in the special that you saw, right? That's about it's about the plastic surgeon, right? And so I remember when I started doing that, I was like, this is too complicated. There's too much setup. Like this is never going to be funny. And I was going to drop the piece entirely. And I do think it's one of the strongest jokes in the whole set now. And I remember a friend of mine just goes, oh, no. Just remember, like, just create an analogy. Like you just need to create an analogy and like just tighten the setup and create an analogy was like kind of the note. Don't give up on it so quickly. And so I think when topics are like nuanced or complicated or make you really angry or really sad, or they're thorny, or you know what I mean? Like it can be easy to like throw out the baby with the bathwater too soon, right? Yeah. So like, you know, whether that's a joke about feminism, whether that's a joke about, a friend of mine did something on the Brian Simpson did a joke about the Israel-Palestine conflict and was like on stage. It's like, that's a pretty sticky, that's something that obviously is not inherently funny at all. And like people are, it's like, it's a horrible situation and people are also have very, very strong views about it. Right. So it's a very like incendiary topic. And I thought he did a really elegant job in not like kind of backing out of the topic. So I think it's just like it's a willingness to iterate and to not be right, and to do that in a public facing way so that you have to like keep going. This is what I was saying is I think stand-up keeps you humble because it's like, so let's say you got your hour, it's good, it's polished, it's done, you do it, everybody loves it. Let's even say that you're Ali Wong or somebody else, but now all that material's gone. And now you got to get up on stage again with nothing.
Yeah.
And they're like, yay, whatever. And then you still have to go on stage and write the new stuff. Like, and you have to do it in front of people, and some of it's going to work and some of it isn't. And that is I think that's the process of like a lot of artists, but this is a public facing version of that. And I think that keeps you really humble. I just think
it does. I'm thinking of all the stuff I write that no one will ever read. Thank God.
Yeah. And imagine if like that journal entry, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or like that letter that you had to Barbie or whatever it was also on stage at some point, it's just like, it's just part of what it is, and I've come to like, I mean, not every time, of course, but like, I appreciate that about stand up. I appreciate the fact that like, it requires you a little bit to like, we like, you want to do well and like I always like want it to be perfect or like want it to be great, and there is no such thing as perfect, and it requires like loosening your grip on that idea and just trying stuff, and being free and kind of letting go. Saying all of this in like my kind of like deep kind of like raspiest iteration of my voice is, I think we can all acknowledge, is wildly hilarious. I've made so many jokes in talking about process. I love the way it's like, I was like, let's talk about the Sia album. And then as soon as we get into talking about comedy, I'm like very serious.
But you know what though? This is like the beauty of the set that I saw, which is that you describe the story of what happened to you, and it is like unequivocally horrible and tragic. And yet the set is so funny. I mean, it's really like laugh out loud, tears in your eyes funny. And that's something you have achieved with this hour, half hour, however long it's going to end up being, which is that you have somehow managed to take this really serious thing and a thought-provoking thing, because you do take, listeners through your decision-making process and what you went through in your recovery and all of this. And yet you have made it so funny. And at the very beginning, it's like, wait, do we laugh with you about this? And then you're like, oh no, this is really funny. I do actually have to laugh with you about this. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm glad you felt that way. And the other interesting thing about doing it in England is like, do people feel that way? Is that an international feeling? Like it's English speaking, but can be culturally different too, And so there's something about, coming back to America versus being in England that I think, at least for me, was like honestly very freeing, because it was like, there were a couple of times when I did shows, like not this show, but did shows in England where like maybe they didn't like some stuff that I knew was very good. Yeah. So there's something very freeing about being in front of an audience that just doesn't get or like you. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you're like, oh, I was trying so hard for you to like me, and now I don't care at all. Like I yeah, exactly. I was like, I couldn't. Oh, you don't like me? Well, fuck you too then. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm so glad we got the explicit for this podcast. I was going to be really disappointed if we did not. We're not.
You get one. We're not. You get one. Yeah, exactly. But there's something very it can be freeing, because it's like, okay, great. I was like trying to be like the nice version of myself, and I guess now I'm free to just be exactly who I am, and maybe you'll like it and maybe you won't, but I don't care, because I never have to come back here.
I love it so much.
It's like,
I love it so much.
Oh, you don't like me? Well, guess what? I'm never going to see you again. And the irony with like British crowds specifically is that it's like, they cannot like you. And then it's like, the second you say that to them, they're kind of like, oh, we like her. We like her.
We like you now.
Yeah. Oh, that little firecracker. Look at that little firecracker.
And you can make these jokes because you are British. Am I correct? You were born in
I was born there. So it was like a, and to be clear, like I had a great time, and there were, and like the night that you were there was like a magical, I think you came to the very last show.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, which was like such a nice, that was such a great show and great experience. And Edinburgh's known for like, you're kind of getting the reps in. So it's like, you're doing it 17 to 20 times in a row. And like, maybe somebody's come from, my show's about an assault, but maybe somebody just came from like fire breathing, or like the juggling girl wasn't available. So now they're like sitting in your show and they're like, the fuck is this? I don't want to see this.
They're like, I got a flyer on the street with a girl's pretty face on it, and I'm here, but
yeah, okay. And I'm here, and I thought this was going to be about dating. They don't know what it's not necessarily your people, and so that's also, I think, good for building chops, but it also, like we're all, I think I'm sure you too, in your writing, it's like you're looking for trying to figure out a way to like be the closest and the most true to yourself, right? Like what is authentic voice, and just like, and then how do you do that in a way that feels like spontaneous and real and connected every time? And it's like, like it's the career equivalent of chasing a rainbow. That's like our job. Like that's like your job. It's like you're just, and it's a I think it's a lifelong craft, and what a great way to spend a life.
Well, that was absolutely beautiful. And I think we're not going to get any better than that. So we should probably just quit while we're ahead.
We're doing we're doing a George Costanza. It's like end on a high and be like,
end on a high. Okay, I gotta leave this meeting. So people can see you in a film that's out right now called Destroy All Neighbors. It's going to be at select Alamo theaters across the country starting in January, which is the time you are listening to this, not based on the Christmas decorations and the Sia album, behind me. And also if people want to hear your comedy, where can they find you?
I'm at Shit from Kiran on the internet and in all the places at shit, the stuff that comes out of your butthole from Kiran, Kiran, on all platforms. And there's a bunch of clips, but then also you'll get news on where I'm touring and then, where the special is going to come out that Alisha got a chance to come support and see, which was a delight for me too. So
I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me for this very festive, fun half hour today.
hug. I'm giving you a hug through the screen.
Hugs.